So about a month ago, Fujifilm sent me out their XH2S, and since then I've had multiple jobs ranging from covering the MLS and the Austin FC to doing documentary work and videography, and I've used the XH2S for every single one of these opportunities. I'm a firm believer that if I'm going to review gear, I'm going to review it using it how I would in the field, which means I use it for my paid work. Basically, I'm putting my money where my mouth is whenever I vouch for a piece of gear. And I gotta tell you, from using it, this is by far not only the best camera that Fujifilm has ever made, period, but this camera right here is the best camera you can get for $2,500 and the best bang for your buck on the market. I'll be able to address a few more things where people complain about, well, what about the A7IV? Well, what about the fact that it's APS-C? And we're gonna cut through all that noise because this camera is amazing. It might be the best thing out today. But at the same time, it's also Fujifilm's greatest mistake. Today's video is sponsored by Mint Mobile. So one quick note before I carry on, I will be able to share with you guys my footage and my scenes from covering the Austin FC with the MLS. But unfortunately, I won't be able to share with you all of my portrait and videography sessions for the simple fact that I do not have clearance from my clients to actually share that stuff yet. It'll come later on. I'll be able to share with you that it's from the XH2S, but let's get into exactly what I love about this camera. Now, first off the bat, people are gonna talk about, what about the body? I know a lot of people who don't like Fujifilm's XH line because it doesn't have the same aesthetic as the XT line, the XT30, the X Pro, etc. I actually welcome this. I love where everything's placed. I love the dedicated record button. I love the ISO button, the white balance button. I love the dial, me being able to have 7 custom functions. Every single thing about this camera feels like it's in the right place. It fits in the hand perfectly. It's still lightweight. And the simple fact that in this whole body, they're able to have an amazing EVF, an amazing screen, even though it is a flippy Audi screen, which I know a lot of people don't like. But whenever it comes to the fact that you're fitting all of those specs and all of these things into a body that is still lightweight, it has that nice little kind of, I call it a paper light screen. The buttons are where they need to be. It has buttons. I love buttons. I was able to assign and map certain things all over the camera specifically for sports, like the sports crop mode, as well as other things. Give me all the buttons, and I love that Fujifilm did that. Now let's talk about this build on this camera and not just the ergonomics and the button placement. The build in the camera is very sturdy, but also I want to talk about the weather sealing. I was drenched in water and beer at the Austin FC match because that's what the fans do. When they score a goal, they throw water and beer in the air. They're given new beers, new water to do the exact same thing when they score another goal or just during any kind of exciting moment. They will literally pour a whole ass beer on you just for funsies. So after all of that, my camera gear was still good. The Fujifilm still worked correctly for the next 3 weeks while I was using it. Very, very primo. Really have to say that the build quality on this thing, and not only feels great, not only feels sturdy, but damn, it really lasts. And apparently in these elements, it's gonna do a great job as well. Touching on the battery, I do have to say one thing though. The only negative that I have about the battery isn't necessarily the battery. It's the fact that Fujifilm, and with everything they're doing, anytime they send out a new camera, they've stopped including a battery charger. I don't like that. Very cheap by the company. We need to continue to call them out on that. Fujifilm, please just send us a charger for the batteries. Thank you. But the biggest thing is the battery is fantastic. Yes, with the IBIS, which is very decent, not the best I've ever used, but definitely 10 times better than anything from Sony. The battery life is still amazing and fantastic. Covering the Austin FC, I ended up being there at that match for about 6 hours, taking photo and video with this camera. Whenever I got there, the battery was at 100%. When I left, it was still at 2%. I shot about 4,000 photos because the match went into double overtime and then into penalty kicks, and was able to capture everything with ease using both electronic shutter at 30 and 40 frames per second, and of course 15 frames per second mechanical. So an update on the camera, it's just too damn good. Nothing misses, nothing's out of focus. Every single person here that's taken a photo of has been great. Nostalgic Neck's the greatest thing to ever happen to anything. So now we're going to get into the things that everyone wants to know. And I'm sorry that I can only talk to you about these things in real world equivalencies. I'm not going to embellish anything. I'm not going to give any fancy B-roll. I'm not going to compare it to a whole bunch of cameras I haven't tested. I'm going to give you my real world actual use. So we're going to start talking about autofocus. And let me tell you, whether it's through videography with the autofocus, including right now, I'm at f1.4. The camera looks like it's doing pretty good on the 33 1.4 following my face, but I was also able to use the 14, 2.8, and as well as the 35 f2 and have fantastic, amazing autofocus throughout the whole time in video. Listen to me. This camera is going to do more than enough to be able to track you and your subject in any kind of video situation. And when it comes to tracking for photo, video, etc., Fujifilm also has some built-in modes for cars, for trains, for planes, for automobiles, etc., lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. They've got everything you need, including pet focus, which I believe is pet eye autofocus. Some great leaps and bounds they've been able to make, and that's because of this amazing stack sensor. And because of this amazing stack sensor, the autofocus on this camera for photos, for stills, whether it be for wildlife, you're doing portraits, you're doing any single thing, street photography. For me specifically, I focused on sports on this, is fantastic and amazing. I was able to put my Canon 1DX away and use this camera, and let me tell you, this is not only the first time that I felt comfortable using wide tracking on a camera and be able to get shots, but my hit rate using this camera went from somewhere about 70 to 80%, because in sports, a lot of times it's about turning really quickly, turning on your camera, or getting out of a preview of an image and immediately getting to the right angle. You're having to switch back and forth to different areas, different levels in the field. This went from about 70, 80% to about 90% hit rate. I don't want to say that the camera was perfect in all regards, because sometimes the autofocus was way too good. And if I had it on eye autofocus, as soon as someone comes in the frame and runs across, it's immediately going to track them and then jump back to the person I wanted it to be on the whole time. But whenever I'm using wide tracking, this thing is fantastic. I was able to track subjects clearly. There was never any issue about any kind of flutter in my shutter, any kind of flutter whenever it comes to focusing. There was no breathing, anything like that. It was fast and crisp, even changing, zooming out and going from different perceived focal lengths every single time, as well as it changing different tiers and levels whenever it comes to my layering in the image. Going from a goalie to the kicker, going from people coming towards me and it having to track their faces coming front to back. The biggest thing that I want people to think of whenever it comes to good autofocus is this: every camera can focus well going left to right whenever it's on the same plane. Where in 2022, you're never going to be disappointed. It's when you're coming up quick and going back quick. That is the issue that a lot of cameras have. And I'm happy to say the XH2S with this beautiful stack sensor and this amazing processing does great. I also want to talk about the fact that Fujifilm claims that it could get 40 frames per second electronic, 30 frames per second electronic, and 15 frames per second mechanical. I am happy to say that without a doubt, Fujifilm did not lie about that. Some cameras like the Sony A7IV and the Canon R7 and the Canon R10 tell you they can do 15 frames per second, 12 frames per second, 10 frames per second, mechanical, electronic, whatever, but they can't. And I hate that. I hate the fact that for Canon's R7, you can't shoot in Canon RAW. You can't use, for certain things with 30 frames per second burst, dual pixel AF. For Sony, it shoots about 7 frames per second instead of the 10 frames per second they promise. I don't like when companies lie, and I'm happy to say that Fujifilm sent me out a couple of CF Express Type B cards, and I use my own Lexar 128 gig. I think it's like 1667 read-write speed, whatever, cards, and they worked great. It was amazing. I never had one buffer issue. I never filled up the buffer shooting 30 frames per second for 2 and 3 second bursts, because I'm just trying to see how things are going. It's basically making a movie. I never had an issue even with the 15 frames per second mechanical in shooting. And let me tell you something, there is a point to where I was so nervous of filling up the buffer, and then I realized I wasn't going to fill it up, that spraying and praying became so dangerous that I actually had to switch from the 30 and 40 frames per second burst to 15 frames per second so I didn't fill up my shutter. And the 15 frames per second was just as fantastic. I'm telling you guys, the fact that I can get a true in 1 second, 15, 30, or 40 frames per second completely blew my mind. The images look amazing, and I'm happy to report that the 30 to 40%, or sorry, 30 and 40 frame per second, because this stack shutter, rolling shutter was almost non-existent. If you zoom in very, very tight, you can see a tiny little bit of warp, but I'm telling you right now, when you're zooming and looking, or when you're looking at the image at its true resolution, There is no rolling shutter. I'm excited to try this out whenever the baseball season starts up, but I'm talking about impact with balls that usually whenever you're using a mechanical or an electronic shutter, you're gonna get a warp in them. They were perfectly round. They look beautiful. The images coming out of this thing, I'm happy to say this is a great stacked shutter. The sensor technology, the read-write speed is amazing. I got to give my hats off to Fujifilm for this and what they're able to do. For someone like me who shoots primarily sports, that's really what I'm starting to direct my whole life into, is documentary and sports documentary whenever it comes to photography. I love the fact that Fujifilm was able to put a stack sensor in this for $2,500, you guys. Today's video is sponsored by Mint Mobile. I'm a kind of person that loves to just save money anywhere that I can. And that's one of the reasons why 18 months ago, I made the switch from a large wireless provider to Mint Mobile, and I haven't looked back since because I'm saving money on America's largest 5G network. Now you're saying to yourself, I've heard of Mint Mobile, isn't that the one that's owned by the less handsome Ryan from Canada? And you'd be 100% correct. The service has been amazing, and the fact that I can get great wireless starting as low as $15 per month is even better. Me, myself, I had the unlimited plan. I've had it for 18 months now, and it has been the bee's knees ever since. I'm sitting here right now telling you that I switched to Mint Mobile and did not have to sacrifice my speed and reliability on my cell service while I got to sit around and save money. And when I tell you that testing or switching to Mint Mobile is easy, I'm telling you testing or switching to Mint Mobile is very easy. All I had to do was follow a link to go onto their website where they sent me a free SIM card so that I could pop it in. Very easy. And even now, you can do the same thing if your phone has eSIM and activate it directly from your cell phone. Mint Mobile will even do the work for you to be able to port your number over from your old wireless provider onto your new phone. So yeah, I'm actually really happy about this opportunity because I've been a Mint Mobile user for 18 months and I sincerely vouch for it. And if you head to mintmobile.com/drosa, you'll be able to get your first month of unlimited talk and text for only $15. That is mintmobile.com/drosa. Let me know down in the comments if you want to use it, if you're going to use it, if you already use Mint Mobile. I vouch for him. Shout out to Ryan, whoever he is. I'm sure he's great at what he does. But thanks for the great cell service at an amazing affordable price. For those of you who are wondering how this thing can be used for street photography, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be amazing. The autofocus is great. The zone focus is going to be great. If you're stopping down to f8, you're going to be more than happy with an 18 f2, with an 18 1.4, with a 35 f2, whatever you want to use, or 23 f2, sorry. You're going to be able to make it happen with this camera. The autofocus is fantastic. The rendering of every image is fantastic. The IBIS is fantastic. And you have nostalgic negative, which is my favorite simulation from Fujifilm. I had to message my boy Leica Lee and tell him that I had to shoot my Leica for a while at the Austin FC game because the XH2S was just too good. It wasn't as fun to get everything just that damn in focus. It literally took the breath out of me because I realized that, man, I don't have to even try. It's gonna hit focus. I'm gonna get the shot that I want. So I had to switch over to Leica to get a little bit more of a taste of failure so that I could motivate myself again. But yeah, man, the camera works great. I can't say anything bad about it. It's kind of ridiculous how easy it is coming from the Leica back to this. It's ridiculous that everything I take is in focus, everything is sharp. And with that being said, for wedding photographers, I just can't tell you how much I would definitely recommend this. In fact, let me just call one of my buddies and have him give me his opinion on it for wedding photographers. My buddy Darren Lingefelt is a wedding photographer in the South Carolina area, I believe. Very, very great photographer. And let me ask him what he thinks about the XH2S because he's been using it for multiple weddings since it has been released, and he said that it's been a game changer for him personally.
Hello?
Hey, you got a second?
Yeah, dude.
I'm telling everyone that the XH2S is pretty badass, but I haven't shot a wedding with it. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, dude, it's supreme for a wedding.
Yeah? How is it compared to the XT4?
Light years.
Light years?
Yeah, because I've shot probably like 7 with the XT4 and then 3 already with the XH2S. And I can already tell.
Damn. How's it do with people walking up and down the aisle and stuff like that? Is it do you have any focus breathing?
That's where it excels right there.
Damn. All right, nice, man. Okay, low light does pretty well.
Yep. Even on the regular XH2, I was shooting that rodeo at 12.8.
Shit, 12.8?
Yep.
Oh, nice. All right, man. Well, cool. Well, that's all I needed, man. I appreciate it. So there you go. That's from an actual wedding photographer, someone who actually knows what he's talking about. I don't shoot weddings anymore, and so I don't want to put something in my mouth and spew it out to you guys without any real experience with it. But Darren is someone that actually is a full-time wedding photographer, a fantastic full-time wedding photographer. I'll link his information down below, but he's someone who, when he made the change, immediately felt the difference. And I want people to understand that with the stacked sensor, you're going to immediately feel the difference. And at $2,500, one has to say, why isn't this getting more, press? Why isn't this seen as a better switch? And this is where I think it's Fujifilm's biggest mistake. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. The issue that I have with the way the XH2S was rolled out is the same way that I had an issue with the way that the Canon R5 was rolled out. Canon decided to bend its knee to the videographer and to the hobbyist who likes to vlog and take video. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because video is amazing, and I'm not one of the guys saying, oh, photos only, you gotta keep photography alive, because photography will always be alive. But I am one of the people that does have an issue whenever camera companies don't understand exactly who their clientele is, and they're so eager, this is for any company actually, to please a tiny little demographic that they think could make them jump up a tiny little bit, that they completely ignore the 90% that is the fan base that is very dedicated and loyal to them. And that is the fact that photographers are the one that really keep Fujifilm alive. I don't really know many people that whenever it comes to videography, they're dying to get their hands on a Fujifilm camera. I know a lot of people who are looking to get their hands on Blackmagic, on Red, on a Canon C70, cameras that are built specifically for cinema things. They may stay with the hybrid camera for a while, but they're always looking to upgrade to that specific cinema camera. The issue that I have with Fujifilm is the fact that they don't understand who exactly makes them. It is the photographer. It is the street photographer, the portrait photographer, the wedding photographer, and in my opinion, sometimes the sports photographer. And that's why Fujifilm should have done a better job of explaining what the stacked sensor can do. You see, guys, the stacked sensor isn't just a bump in autofocus. It is the read-write speed. It is the reliability. It is the knowledge of knowing that every single thing that you're doing and you're putting the camera through, it's going to be able to achieve it. When I buy the Fujifilm XH2S, this will be a camera that I can stick with for many, many years. The Canon 1DX is a decade-old camera, and I was still able to create amazing images and have about an 80% hit rate, and those images look fantastic. It's because it's a good-ass camera at launch. This camera is a good-ass camera at launch, and in my opinion, the very, very best camera that not only you can get for $2,500, honestly, if I see anyone purchase an A7IV over this, I'm gonna lose myself, but the fact that, bang for the buck, this is the best camera, period. Better than Fujifilm's X100V, and in my opinion, far better than Sony's A7IV. But that's my opinion. Someone who used this day to day, every single day, for all of their professional work and paid work, and who had to put themselves on the line whenever I was using this. Not to mention the raw files are fantastic, easy to work with, and it's just a fantastic experience altogether. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this. If you want any more information or you have anything that you'd like to ask, if you didn't have the same experience or anything in between, you can let me know down below in the comments. I appreciate you watching. Have a good one.